You're coming home from a long-ass road trip with your family and everything's in disarray. Your kids are fighting in the backseat because they're getting restless. Your wife's glaring out the side window because you showed a small amount of negative body language about 10 kilometers ago, and your suspiciously talkative car is whining to you.
Holy fuck.
So let me ask you a question. What do? Do you pull off onto that side road and just go through the Macca's drive-thru? No, that's the easy way out. Do you pull into that pub over there, go in with your wife and down a few pints for a romantic evening? No, you f***ing idiot. Child Protective Services is on your ass after the last time you drunk and drove with your kids. Do you think that's a good idea? Why don't you just pull into the Woolworths up there and get a couple snacks together for the whole family? You fool! Then you've got nothing for the car, and he's already a little bit angsty after that stunt you pulled in his back seat last week. But then, you see it. A beacon coming over the horizon just calling to you. The solution to all of your problems. It's your local Australian petrol station. Petrol stations are some of God's greatest gifts to mankind, aside from Hayley Williams and the Nintendo Power Glove. Servos are your one-stop shop for every single one of your road trip and otherwise life-related needs. However, there's one slight issue associated with them. There's too bloody many of them. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, you can never have too much of a good thing, but then when I bring up my supply of black tar heroin, everyone pulls out their pitchforks and goes into a rage. Since this is one of the greatest conundrums known to man, more so than global warming and modern warfare combined, I'm gonna help you out a little bit. I'm here to help you determine the world's greatest petrol station. Well, Australia's greatest. No one really cares about Europe or America or... Before we go any further, we're gonna have to write out a couple quick origin stories just to get a bit of context on what we're dealing with. BP is a bona fide hood classic when it comes to service stations, not even gonna lie. Known for an oil spill that f***ed up Bikini Bottom, a whole bunch of tap dancing penguins and Gary Boozy, BP has made its name known amongst the lands. If you want to go into net worth, BP is up there in the top 10, worth about 93 billion smackaroos. Now, while BP is often considered to be the big boy on campus, you can't count out the cane to its able, Shell. Known as the second best pair of yellow arches this side of the Mississippi, Shell was actually a major sponsor of the Iraq War, reportedly being the first ones to leak the information regarding Saddam Hussein and his WMDs. As a result, their profit margins have been through the roof ever since, rising to a good old 175 billion smackaroos. Now, while you've got these two big brands duking it out for the top spot in Australia, Apco is often seen as the underdog. Local only to Victoria, Apco can be seen as a homemade brand decking it out with all the international hobnobs. Meanwhile, allied with Australian icon Woolworths, Caltex is the company man's choice for fuel. Because Woolworths has its reputation on the line, Caltex has to have some pretty decent quality fuel as a result. That's because the moment they serve shitty fuel, the fresh food people will start to get a little bit stale. And look, there's a whole bunch of other petrol stations and servos out there that we can also account for. United, 7-Eleven, Mobil, Puma, all those bits and pieces, but quite honestly, I don't give a shit. They all share the exact same traits anyway. They're just here to pad out the list. Finally, we have Tesla, which really shouldn't be on this list at all, but we're here now, so. BP is pretty expensive due to their leading man status, but aside from that, their range is pretty great, and it varies depending on quality and taste.
Oh, that's a sweet ass ride, man. Hey, man, you think I could get a little squirt of gas?
Meanwhile, Shell's range is actually pretty large, to the point where it almost teeters on the brink of oversaturation. However, despite this, its quality is pretty good, and it tastes like a cool malt liquor on the shores of a broken marriage. Meanwhile, Caltex has some pretty futuristic shit, specifically that found in the form of its Vortex Premium 98. This shit'll clean your car's insides for you, giving your Corolla the equivalent of a mechanical bowel movement as it strips the rust and the shame from its fuel ports. With all the other brands, I have no idea, because again, I don't care. I'm assuming that since 7-Eleven has a partnership with Krispy Kreme, they have some form of fuel that injects hot fudge directly into your sedan, but again, it didn't make too much of a difference for me, so I didn't put in an effort to find out. And finally, we have Tesla, which doesn't even have fuel, so it doesn't even count, and frankly, it should be disqualified. The food at BP is usually pretty top notch, you know what I'm saying? Homemade pies, coffee beans, sausage McMuffins, couch food deals, all sorts of high class stuff that'll suit you wherever you have to go. Shell has some pretty good quality too, but since they're aligned with Coles, the tight asses refuse to provide homemade stuff, instead choosing to focus on groceries, meals to go and dairy packs. Meanwhile, the partnership with Australia's second favourite supermarket ends up being one of Caltex's biggest strengths, as since Woolies deals with food, they offer some nice deals through their Foodery and Mart brands, including meal prep options. Apco is fantastic because they have what Victorians refer to as the VCal breakfast. Cheap pastries, beverages, brekkie lunches and noxious antifreeze all rolled into one pack. Mobil has no idea, I don't know. Again, 7-Eleven has the Krispy Kreme thing, and I'm assuming Puma has some form of sexual cologne that they're able to whip out. But other than that, nothing too significant of note. And again, Tesla has absolutely nothing because it's just an ectoplasm pack for your wall. Why the f are these interns writing these scripts for me again? This is why you don't outsource your work, okay? You do it all yourself and you let the pressure just build up and you just do your Finally, we're going to talk about locations and convenience. Usually BPs are encountered on main highways begging for a quick suck of fuel. Sometimes they're pretty big, sometimes they're small, hell, sometimes there's two of them on either side of the road. Shell servos are a little bit temperamental when it comes to size, like you bring it up once and you just never hear the end of it. All of them vary in size. Some have garages, others have car washes, but no matter what, all of them are always located in the shit part of town. Apcos are often located on highways and freeways, which is good for a bit of a cheeky last stop before your road trip, but this comes with the downside of a high amount of traffic coming in, meaning punch-ons of tradies as all the Hiluxes and Ford Rangers stack up. Meanwhile, this is the category into which Caltex shines, because since it's brown-nosing the Woolworths stakeholders, it doesn't have a choice but to be the most convenient son of a bitch on this planet. In rural areas, you'll find them anywhere. They don't give a shit. Next to a cemetery 1 second, outside a pool the next. You turn your back for 5 seconds and they'll wind up at your next 21st birthday party, you know what I'm saying? Caltex is like the ditzy glug that has no idea what it's doing or where it's going, but you know what? We love it anyway. Now, when it comes to the other locations, this is the main reason why I have some kind of intense hatred for them, is because their locations are randomized purely to compete with the other service stations. It's like a form of gang stalking, honestly. You see a big brand like Shell or BP pop up somewhere, next minute all the other brands form a circle around it and try to intimidate it, but they can never establish dominance. Before I go any further, I want to make it absolutely clear that there was no bias in this decision whatsoever. I never actually purchase fuel for my cars, okay? It's always 100% organically siphoned, using nothing but a hose, a funnel, and my co-worker's unattended hatchback. In my unbiased opinion, Apco sits at the very top. While its petrol is overall pretty shit, the experience it offers is actually second to none. It's got a supermarket, sprawling size, and most importantly, it's Australian. Like, none of that corporate overlord crap, okay? The fossil fuel business is a clean business, let's keep it that way, alright? Next up comes the usual suspects, BP and Shell. Both of them are so competitive in their attempts to be unique, they end up being the same deal with all their shit. From here we have Caltex, which is okay, but usually a tad more expensive in many people's experiences. From here, all the other brands fall into line because they don't offer much, their petrol is shit, and I fail to see any Durry/Coke combos. But either way, that's my essay concluded. Hopefully it's given you a deeper insight into the temples that we know as servos, and on top of that, hopefully it's given you a deeper appreciation into their contributions to our culture. Until next time guys, keep them fueled up and ready, and don't cross my lane. Don't cut me off, or I swear to God I will broadside you.